Okay, we're going to do Psalm 44. When Roger sent out the request, he said if somebody would help him with tonight, and he gave us the option. And I looked at 44 and I thought, well, God kind of led me that way, so here I am. The psalm is a lament psalm and has a similar title as Psalm 42 and 45. Psalm 42 says, as a deer pants for flowing streams. And Psalm 45, which Roger did last week, was very, very good. It's a love song, my heart overflows, and it really was a love song. Our psalm says we have heard with our ears, which gives us an idea about what it's about. And if it look at the title, in my Bible, it says, come to our help. And you'll see why it's titled that way as we go through it. This psalm is a lament about a major battle that they fought and lost. They were defeated. And I tried to research what battle that was, but really couldn't find it. And then I thought, well, it's not really a matter of what battle it is. That's not really the most important thing. It's knowing that they lost this battle and they're trying to understand why they lost this battle. This psalm is divided into 5 sections. Verses 1 through 3, the focus is on the past and God's deliverance. Verses 4 through 8 is confidence in God. They know God can do this. Verses 9 through 16 is suffering and disgrace. Verses 17 through 22, claim of innocence. And verses 23 through 26 is prayer for deliverance. And the one thing that I have to remind myself, and I learned this when me and Steve was talking through the Old Testament, that Psalms are songs that are sung. The Israelites sung these psalms. That's what they are, psalms. They sung them. And songs bring out different emotions with different people. And I actually did a little Google on this, and I don't recommend Googling stuff and taking it to heart, but it said the Jews were very emotional on some of these songs, and it makes sense to me. Because they bring out memories, they bring out facts, they bring out different things that happens. And as I studied this, I thought of a song that really affects me. And it's a song by Jeff and Sherry Easter. It talks about praising God when you're going through the tough times. And as I listen to it, it reminds me of a time in my life when my late wife was really bad, of how God was there. I can't hardly listen to that song without getting tears and without thinking back of how good God is and how things were going horrible then, but how he blessed my heart through that time. And that psalm brings back that event and that stuff. And I think as we read the Psalms, we need to remember that these are songs. And yes, you need to study the Bible. And yes, we need to look and learn and stuff. But don't forget what these are, because I think that's a major part of how you can relate to these. Another thing in this psalm, I keep saying psalm, but I guess that's all right. Another thing you should pay attention to is sometimes the author says we or us, which is, this would be we and us, or sometimes he uses me, my, or I, personal. That's the one thing that I really noticed in this. The first section, 1 through 3, God had delivered their ancestors against all odds. This has been passed down from generation to generation. Think about when they looked at the promised land in a human perspective, how it was impossible. And they shared it. If you remember back, because in this verse 1 through 3, let me read this. O God, we have heard with our ears, our fathers have told us. How many of us that are fathers or mothers have told your children what God has done for you, how God has brought you through things? It come to my mind, and it's been a little while now, that I had never told my daughter how I got saved until it hasn't been real long ago. And that's very important to share how God has brought you through things with your family. Second verse, or last part of that verse. What deeds you performed in their days, you with your own hand drove out the nations, but then you planted, you afflicted the peoples, but then them you set free. For not by their own sword did they win the land, nor did they own arm save them, but your right hand and your arm and the light of your face, for you delighted in them. Sorry, tongue-tied. You think back the one generation, and just talk about when they went into the promised land. If you go back to the generation before the one that went in, think about what they said. This is impossible. It can't be done. They're giants. We're grasshoppers. But this generation had faith to conquer. And as you look at that, verse 3, for not by their own sword did they win the land. They realized, and they're telling their descendants, we didn't do this on our own. God did this. Yes, we had some weapons. Yes, we had this. But it was not those that did it. It was God that took them through that. The next section, verses 4 through 8, is confidence in God, not in anything else. This section, if you look, let's look at this verse, 4 through 8. You are my king, O God. This is personal. This is the guy that wrote this psalm. He's talking about He's my king, O God. Ordained salvation for Jacob. Though you, or through you, we push, now this is a group, we push down our foes through your name, and we tread down those who rise up against us as a group. For not in my bow, not in his bow, do I trust, nor can my sword save me. He has no confidence in none of this stuff. He's got it, and he's talking about it, but he has no confidence. But you have saved us from our foes, and you have put to shame those who hate us. In God we have boasted continually, and we will give thanks to your name forever. Evidently, and I was thinking about this today, evidently they had won some kind of battle somewhere before the battle that this song is wrote about, because he's talking about how God delivered them. And it was God that did it. It's nothing that they trusted in. It was God that delivered them. So that's something we need to remember, because sometimes when you go through things, you may not have the resources to take care of what you need to, but God can still deliver. I know he's done it for me many times, so I know my God is able to do anything. So let us not, and the last part in verse 8, give thanks to your name forever. How many of us forget to thank God for what he's done for us? I mean, I'm guilty. We get down through something, and then the first thing you know, we're thinking, I'm going fishing tomorrow. Yippee! You know. How about we get on our knees and thank God for what has happened? Verses 9 through 16. This is a battle that they have been defeated. The last verses were in the past. This last verses we just read were in the past. Now it may have been recent past, it may have been a little bit past, but it had to be in the generation of the people that wrote this, because it says, on verse 4, you are my king, O God, ordained. He talks about him and how God delivered him. But this 9 through 16, notice that they realize that God did this. Verses through 9 through 14. Sorry. But you have rejected us and disgraced us and have gone out with our armies. Who's the you? Who do you think a you is? But you have rejected us. It's God. So he realizes that God isn't helping him. You have made us turn back from the foe, and those who hate us have gotten spoiled. I mean, God's letting the enemy have full control over them. You have made us like sheep for slaughter. You have scattered us among the nations. You have sold your people for a trifle, demanding no high price for them. I mean, just sold them for nothing. Let them come in. You made us a byword among the nations, a laughingstock among the peoples. All day long my disgrace is before me, and shame has covered my face. At the sound of the taunter and the reviler, at the sight of the enemy and avenger. Can you feel how despaired this guy is? How they are? How much in despair? If you've ever went through a trying time, you know how it almost hurts physically. Not only within your own soul, but it's painful to go through stuff. And especially, they know that God has allowed this, that he's let them lose in the battle. Then God has turned against them. In Deuteronomy 28:15, chapter 28, verse 15, and this is what I thought about. But if this is God talking, curses for disobedience. But if you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God, or be careful to do all his commandments and his statutes that I command you today, then all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And then also verse 25. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. And you shall be a whore to all the kingdoms of the earth. Doesn't this sound like what happened to them? It sounds exactly like what's happened. Have they done something wrong? Why has God done this? Especially on verses 15 and 16. All day long my disgrace is before me, and shame has covered my face. At the sound of the taunter and reviler, at the sight of the enemy and the avenger. I mean, it had to be horrible for these people. Then let's start with verses 17 through 22. We may get done real early. All this has come upon us, though we have not forgotten you, and we have not been false to your covenant. Our heart has turned back, nor have our steps departed from your way. Yet you have broken us in the place of jackals and covered us with the shadow of death. I'm going to stop right there. Does it sound like they're following God? And I researched every commentary I had to find out if this is true, and all of them say yes. I asked Pastor Roger. He said it looks like they are following God. So you can see how this song would really affect them, especially when you're going through a trying time and you're crying out to God. Why? why, Lord, did I do something? And we're all set on that mindset. Does God love us no matter what we do? Yes. Why does things happen sometimes? For punishment, sometimes not for punishment, sometimes for a witness to others. And I think that's a thing that we tend to forget. And look at verse 20 and 21. If we had forgotten the name of our God or spread out our hands to a foreign God, would not God discover this? For he knows the secrets of our heart. So they're calling out to God, saying, God, we're following you. Why is this happening? And then they're saying, God, you know our heart. You know if we're going the wrong way. You know if we're doing wrong. And does he? He knows every heart in here. He knows why I'm up here, whether I'm up here to glorify him or whether I'm up here because I want to be here. He knows. He knows all things of motive and everything. So there's nothing that you can hide from God. This is their claim of innocence. Think of Job. I know I thought of Job when I was studying this lesson. Job never did figure out why. But Job quit questioning when God confronted him. Job, were you here when I made the world? And that's the thing I think that we have trouble remembering is it's about God. It's not really about us. And verse 22, yet for your sake we killed all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. Does that verse sound familiar? And I'll tell you why. If you turn to, if you want to, turn to Romans 8:36. As it is written, we are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. Also, if you look back at Isaiah 53, and this is Isaiah 53:7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that was led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shears is silent, so he opened not his mouth. Who's that? Jesus. So if Jesus suffered the way he suffered, and he did it for our salvation, what makes us think that bad things won't happen to us? I mean, we all question, as these people are, why did this battle, why did we get so defeated? But yet, and I know that there are times when you go through trying times and you can't figure it out, but I've seen many things happen, bad things that happen to people, and it's a very good witness for somebody that doesn't know Jesus. I mean, because I know a lot of people will tell you that, oh, come to God and everything will be wonderful. No. I think I've had more bad stuff happen to me since I've got saved than before. But you know what the difference is? I know God. I have that peace and that comfort that you can't have without God. You might have all the money in the world and everything, and I do know that there's many, many people that have everything and still commit suicide because they're miserable. But when you got God, you got everything. And that is part of, God tells you, you're going to suffer. The way is not easy. Now let's look at, we're going to be done way early. Let's look at verses 23 through 26. Awake, why are you sleeping, O Lord? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face? Why do you forget our affliction and oppression? For our soul is, no, I'm going to stop there. 23 and 24. They're really wondering, God, do you know what's going on? And I don't know if any of you all have ever been in that situation. I've shared this before, but I'll share it 1,000 times if it glorifies God. I remember one time when I had to go to the pharmacist and get some medicine for my late wife, and I didn't have the money. I'll tell you, it was $1,000 every 2 weeks. And anybody who works at Ames, no, you ain't got no $1,000. And I left that pharmacy, and I was crushed. I felt like, God, I can't go on. I remember, I can even tell you where I was. I was going up the ramp at 50 to get on Interstate 77. I can remember that spot like it was yesterday. And all of a sudden, God gave me a peace that is unexplainable. Did that burden go away? No. I still had to get it. Now it worked out. And that's no consequence. God worked it out, how I could get the medicine. But I'll tell you, at the time when that happened, I didn't see no way, and she had to have it. But God worked it out, and I'll never forget the peace that I got just after feeling like the weight of the world was crushing me. I didn't know what I was going to do, and before that, I was like these people. God, where are you at? I know there's times when God, you don't feel like God's there, but He's there. And keep calling out. He will come to you. He will answer your prayer. Know that. He's done it for me. He'd do it for anybody. And verse 25, 26. For our soul was bound down to the dust. Our belly clings to the ground. Rise up. Come to our help. Redeem us for the sake of your steadfast love. Look how low these people are. Look how far down they feel. I mean, my belly clings to the ground. Could you imagine how they feel as they sing this song, knowing, and don't forget, this is real people, real time that happened to them. So this is not something that we read in a book and study the words and figure out, what this means, that means. This is real events that happen, real people singing this. Just like we're here today, and some people in this room may be going through some really tough times. I know some of us are. Some of the people are. Not me right now. I mean, we've got little problems, but nothing major. But there are some people in this church going through some tough times and probably feel kind of like this. But just remember, as you read the Psalms, as you study the Psalms, as you look at this, these are real people going through real times. And this psalm here really touched my heart as I read this and studied this. It's like I can see how, thinking back at their loved ones that, maybe their dads and moms that told them about this, went through this experience. Because as we first started, we have heard where their ears, and our fathers have told us. I'm sure this got passed down from generation to generation. Because I actually did a little looking on, studying on when did they use these songs, and I thought of one place in the Bible. Can you think of a place in the Bible, in the New Testament, somebody singing? I'll give you a little clue. An earthquake come. Paul and Silas in prison. They weren't singing Amazing Grace. They weren't singing How Great Thou Art. They were singing the Psalms. I'd never thought of that until today. I thought, boy, it would be interesting to really be able to hear how they sung these. I actually Googled it and brought up one, but make a lot of sense. They were singing in Hebrew and stuff, but it sounded pretty. But yeah, but who knows what song Paul and Silas was singing, because that's what they knew. That's what they grew up with. Anybody have any comments, questions? You're going to be real early. Well, hopefully, I really pray and hope you guys got a little bit out of this. I know, and if you really study the Bible, it's well worth it. There is a treasure trove in here, and I'll tell you, to know the Bible, you'd be surprised how many times something happens and something will come to your mind that'll help you, or witnessing to somebody. There's times I've been trying to talk to somebody and something popped in my mind, and I have a horrible memory trying to memorize stuff. But something will pop in my mind that I read and I can share, because being a witness, I mean, there's no greater thing than to share Jesus with somebody.
You know, no matter how many times I read it, I'll go back and read it. Where did that come from? I missed that the first time or second time, third time.
Oh, yeah.
It's always something new.
It is.
Hard to read.
Well, and that's why it's a living word. It's a living word. It's not a book to study like you would another book. It's a living word. And how many times, like you're saying, how many times do you read the Bible and all of a sudden, man, I didn't see that before. But like I say, it's important, and you do need to read the Bible. Make sure that everything that is said is true.
Jim, one thing about this chapter right here, if you read it, it meets you where you're at in life.
Yeah.
It's not a happy ending story.
No.
They're left, God, where are you? And that's how it ends. And it meets us where we're at in real life, because we're often in that position where we ask that question, where are you? What I'm going through in life right now is challenging me, and I don't know why I'm defeated for. I'm faithful to you. I look at my life, and I'm examining my life, and I don't see that there's any evidence of sin and why am I being crushed? And it meets us right there, right where we're at. I mean, when there is sin in our life, we're like, okay, I realize I deserve this. But when we're being faithful to God and we're living our life in a way that, I'm not saying perfect, please don't tell me I'm saying perfect, we're not there. But when we're living our life and we're asking God, there's these challenges coming, and that's where these people were at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the times when we do cry out to God. And I mean, they're on their face, on the ground.
Flat.
And, I think even when there's sin in our life and we're broken of our sin, there's a position of repentance here that they're really examining themselves. And there's times that God wants us to do that, to examine ourselves. And because we need to do that no matter what time of our life we're going through. There's that examining that needs to happen.
That is a good point, because when I went through that time and loss of my wife and everything, that drew me closer to God than if he'd give me millions of dollars. And I mean, it seems like the hard times is when you draw the closest. And it's the hard times that I think back on. And it sounds silly to think back on the horrible times, but that's what really, I remember how good God was. And it sounds silly to say, well, my wife's having all these treatments and all this money, and you're going to lose her anyway. But God was very good through that time, and it's hard for me to explain. I don't think there's words that can convey what God does for a person when he's going through horrible times. I really don't think, unless you've went through it, I don't think you can comprehend how good God is, even through the times when you feel like, what have I done?
Well, this chapter here is not a chapter many people you heard or already say that, how can a good God allow so many children to die in the flood?
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard that I don't know how many times, and this is a chapter that explains. And,
Yeah.
and that we cry out to God in the midst of difficult times like this, where they have no answer. There is no answer to
Yeah, I never-
defeat it. And many times in our life, the same thing is there too. I have no answer, but I know who I cry out to.
Yeah, they're like Job. They don't get the answer. I never thought about that, but yeah, they don't get an answer. But yeah, you just never know.
One thing that's up to date, I bet the Bronx can identify with this chapter.
Oh, Bronx?
Yeah.
Oh, I meant to announce that.
You know,
Yeah,
what
Jerry.
they went through. I mean, there they are in a foreign country serving and, you know, and doing
Did you see?
work and things like that happening. Yeah.
Did you see the email today, or do you get them? Jerry got an email from the Bronx that they're pretty well got everything back. They're actually, it went really well through this thievery and all this is actually better witness. This is another case where it's a good witness for everybody around. And they're actually a little, didn't they say, a little better off than they were before the thievery. So who knows? Yeah, there's multiple times in the Bible that bad things happen and you don't know the answer, but and the one thing I did have in my notes I wanted to bring out, you know what? It's not about us. It's not about us having a good life. What's it about? It's about God. You're here for God, not God, you ain't your servant. You are here for God. And it's about Him, not us. I'm glad you spoke up for it. I asked Roger if he's going to stand here, so if I miss something, you bring it out. But anyway, anybody else? Wilmer?
I just heard from Irene Chumley. John fell a couple of days or yesterday and went to the hospital, and so he has a vertebrae that's misplaced and he's on a brace to wear for 6 months.
Okay, we need,
I just had a note from her that she had gone to see a cousin today and in the hospital, and so she'd fallen and she'd been in the hospital 14 days on life support. And this is 14 days and they're removing life support. Went to see her with 2 other cousins, so she's having a time. John not being well and then losing the cousins.
okay, and remember this in prayer. Anybody else have anything? If not, you're going to get home early. I'm short in stature and short in length. Nothing further. Hey, Josh, would you mind closing in prayer?